My name's Tom Stern, and I'm a director of photography.
Million Dollar Baby, winner of 4 Oscars, including the Best Picture in 2005. Flags of Our Fathers, which won the Best Foreign Language Film at the 2007 Japan Academy Prize. These are just a couple of the acclaimed movies shot by today's guest. Cinematographer Tom Stern has gained the know-how of controlling light and dark from his decades-long experience as a lighting technician.
Specifically about lighting, and I tend to pre-visualize things, but it's really what makes it interesting for me is Connie Hall, who used to be my boss, called it serendipity, and it's almost like these things sort of talk back to you, and I'd like to keep it kind of unstructured.
Today's guest on Heart to Heart is cinematographer Tom Stern, called the Master of Lighting in Hollywood. Today on Heart to Heart, we're joined with renowned cinematographer Tom Stern, the Master of Light and a member of the American Society of Cinematographers. Welcome to Heart, and it is a great pleasure to have you on our show. Would you like to say hello to our viewers that are watching?
I would indeed. Hello, everyone out there.
All right, so let's begin by talking about your visit to Korea this time around. I know that you are one of the busiest cinematographers in Hollywood. So what brings you to Korea this time around despite your very busy schedule?
I was invited here to participate in a master class with Korean cinematographers and kind of looking a little bit at some new technology and just beginning a conversation. And I was invited by a German company, Aeroflex, or Arri, I should say, and there you go. Okay, so here you are. This is not your first visit to Korea. You've been here many, many years back. Yes, indeed. Yes. I was here in 1976 with Eugene Ormandy and the Philadelphia Symphony Orchestra, which seems like yesterday, but I guess if we did the math, it's probably more than 40 years ago. Yes, in the 70s. Indeed. There have been many changes. Do you notice the changes in Korea? Yeah, it's incredible, actually. The amount of growth, and it's very impressive because it seems very aesthetic. And I was admiring the maple trees and the ginkgo trees today, which are just beginning to turn. Yes. And there's a nice, I guess, contrast between the modern and an appreciation of the natural and the aesthetic. So, and I must say, it's an absolutely spotless city. Well, we hope that you enjoy every moment of your stay in Korea. You spent part of your teenage years in France, and I understand this is when you actually started experimenting with photography. And then you later continued on to film studies at Stanford University. So you do have quite a unique background. I mean, from a graduate of a prestigious university that chooses to move on to working as a gaffer. That's right? Yeah, correct. So you had been a successful gaffer for many years on major features. So is there a person who influenced you? What influenced you to transition into the role of a cinematographer? The transition happened because, I guess we should back up. When I left Stanford, I did I have a pragmatic side to me. And it occurred to me that if there were 1,000 film school graduates, 900 wanted to be directors. The other 100 wanted to be cinematographers. And there was maybe half of one job. And I said, well, this is not a formula for success. So I thought, well, I then decided, well, if I deconstruct cinematography, one has composition, and then there's the aspect of motion, and then there's illumination or lighting. And I thought, okay, I'm specialized in the lighting. And that way I was able to work immediately and have a lot of experience, and did that. I had actually a whole career doing that. And my last probably last and greatest mentor, a gentleman named Conrad Hall, who won 3 Academy Awards for cinematography, and I did the last 2 pictures with him, American Beauty and Road to Perdition. He became ill and passed away at the age of 74. And I was fortunate to be in a position to retire from the film industry and do something else, which is what I was contemplating. And then the phone rang, and it was Clint calling. And he said, how would you like to shoot my next film? And I said, well, I only see 2 problems, Clint. And the first one is I'm not in the union, and the unions are very strong in the American film industry. And the second is I've been an electrician. I don't really know the first thing about it. And he called back. He said, well, don't worry about the union. And it seems to me that you've been paying attention for the last 20 years, so whatever. I said, well, could I have a day to think about it? And he said, well, I won't tell you what he said, but he said, well, he said, all right, I'll talk to you tomorrow, hangs up. And I thought, well, there's no sense being a 52-year-old retiree and playing golf or something. And I figured that statistically, if I did this, I would fail and I'd have to leave in, embarrassment. But I was living in France anyway, so, and I was planning to leave, so there seemed to be no downside. So that's when I started about 30-some films ago. So it was a tremendous gift from him on his part.
How is it working with him? Do you talk a lot? Do you have conversations a lot? Because I think I saw part of an interview that you did in the past. It was where you select or choose like a spot to begin. It was where you mentioned something about you walking into a room and standing in a certain position, and director Clint Eastwood would walk in.
You're a hard worker. I've been ratted out. Well, if we back up, he's funny, but people don't realize that he's actually sort of shy. And we talk a lot, but unusually, in fact, getting back to the panel, I explained how we work, and the French lady next to me just is like, her jaw dropped open, and she said, oh my God, that's the way the director, and she'd done 16 films with a French director, and she said, that's the way she works. I said, well, that's weird, because that's 2 unusual things. But we start, because he doesn't like to overly discuss things. He likes the improvisational aspect of things. Unfortunately for me, my tools are pretty heavy, and we want to go fast. I start normally by trying to find some sort of visual reference. Say it's a book. If we're doing boxing, there was a boxing book I got. For the letters from Iwo Jima and Flags of Our Fathers, for example, I was given a series of photography books that were done during the war as sort of propaganda, maybe has the wrong sense, but it's to explain to American citizens what the war was about. And curiously, they were done by the best photographers in America because they all joined the military during the conflict. So I took 10 Post-its on the book on the images I thought were kind of reference spirit images for these 2 films we're going to do. And we were flying somewhere together, and one of the fringe benefits of working with him is the planes you're in don't have many people in them. And we're flying along, and I said, Clint, take a look at this book. And so he starts looking. But the other thing people don't read, he's an absolutely voracious reader. So he reads and reads and reads and reads. So he's like, and he knows I read, and so he's like, So he starts looking through the book, and I mind my business. I'm reading the newspaper, and he says, yeah. And then he proceeded to take one Post-it off an image I had, and he turned some pages and put another page, and he gave me the book back. And that set the look for Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima. And that was basically sort of the spirit of what he wished to do. And then each day, I get to work before he does, and I will have thought, so I can make about 87% of a Clint Eastwood movie, but I can't make the other 13%.
Yeah.
So I'm there first, and typically we'll stand over where I think perhaps we'd start in my Clint Eastwood light movie. And then Clint shows up, and his team are people that he's been with. I think now, I guess I'm either the oldest or the longest or the second longest at this point, but everybody's been there. He knows everybody. So he'll come across and say, hello, good morning, hello, how you doing, da, 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 da. And eventually he gets over to where I'm standing, and we'll chat a little bit about what happened last night or something that happened 20 years ago, nothing about the movie. And he'll sort of like, kind of like this, and then he kind of drifts off again. And he'll either then drift around and come back, in which case we start there, or he'll stay over there, and in which case, after, I would say after 37 seconds, then I go over there, because he's more attracted to that than that. And that's where we start. And then it's sort of like, you just start in that direction.
Yeah, it's amazing how people kind of develop something. You could kind of read each other's minds, and yeah. Oh yeah,
it's terrible.
You know what the other is.
It's a little bit like Married, but yeah, no, it's actually wonderful. I should say. I think what one wants to do is build, kind of develop a style or an aesthetic where you're building on. It's a system of refining. You sort of build the master shot, and then you refine it as you go in. If you have to redo it every time, number one, it's going to be difficult to match. It's going to take too long, and it's like 3 times more work, and it just won't go too well. I mean, there's typically, I've done films where we'll get like 7 shots with the same lighting, but maybe with just a single net floating around. If we're doing over the shoulder, we'll slow somebody down. Or.
Now, what's most important to you when it comes to shooting a scene? Is there something in particular that you mainly focus on?
Well, for me, and different people have different viewpoints, my point of view is I'm there to help the director tell his story. So I need to understand and listen very carefully to the director. And I work, some directors like you to ask questions, other ones tell you what they want.
I see.
So we develop it, and I listen in any event, and understand his perspective. The only way I can help him tell his story, the performance is none of my business. The script is really none of my business, but there's sometimes I can ask the odd question. But how I can help him is in, once again, composition, motion, and lighting. And he will probably have some overall viewpoint that's driven by his understanding of the story. And if I can embrace that and understand it, then I'll proceed to work in that direction. So that's the most important thing. Then the second most important thing is actually understanding, we divide the work into days. It's very helpful to know exactly what the script says you're supposed to do today, what everybody's dialogue is, how it relates to other scenes, where we shoot out of order a lot of time.
Yes.
So, I mean, you'd be amazed on a set. People say, well, is it supposed to be day or night? So we're in a stage like this, and we can make it day or night. It's easy to do, but it depends on what happened just before, what's going to happen afterwards. But there's can be confusion about it, unfortunately. So it's understanding all that, and then probably the third aspect is you probably, during production, the most important piece is the actor. Mm-hmm. And I always try to develop an empathy with the actor so that they become as comfortable as possible, and all of my stuff becomes totally transparent. Mm-hmm. So some actors have, you want them to be confident in you, so they're comfortable. And some actors are distracted by some things and not other things. And
right, yes.
It's a matter of being sensitive to that. And if for some reason you have to enter into a space that is not comfortable for them, is to try to do it, like mutually explain to them why it would be a good idea to do this for this one shot. And more or less why you need to do it. And that's kind of it.
Oh, sounds very complex. Of course, as you mentioned, working with directors, it's very different depending on who the director is. I know this is a very difficult question, but is there a favorite? Is there like a project or a film that you feel a special attachment to?
There are a couple, and the easy answer is they're like my children, and I love them all for different reasons. But I did a film with John Turturro called Romance and Cigarettes. That's a musical with James Gandolfini that was really, it's like an insane movie, and it has an absolutely wonderful soundtrack. And it was very poorly released because of a bunch of corporate shuffles. And I'm very proud of that because it was just a wonderful experience, and I think it sort of transcends genre. I'm not a big genre guy. I like to try to, kind of break open it a little bit, and that was a pleasure. The other one that was gratifying was Letters from Iwo Jima, because Clint went to Warner Brothers and said, well, I'm doing Flags of Our Fathers, I'd like to make a film about the Japanese side of the story, and I'd like to do it in Japanese. And so the poor executives at Warner Brothers are like, what? And so, what are we going to do with this? He said, well, no, that's what I'd like to do. And so it's like, yeah, but what are we going to do with it? No, but that's what I'd like to do. And so the discussion ended up, we were going to do that, but we weren't going to take too long to do it and not spend a lot of money. So the cast, there was a huge language gap between the cast, and I think only Ken Watanabe spoke English. Everybody else just spoke Japanese. So for me, it was a real pleasure working in that environment. And we had to do it in California very quickly.
I see. Well, this is a very typical question, or it's probably a question you get all the time from people like me, just ordinary people. What does it feel like to see and work with celebrities, those famous people?
That's a good question. I'm gonna just I'll think about it, try to get a good answer. It's strange because I think the reason they're celebrities is they have a sort of a photogenicness. So they seem almost uniquely larger than they are, always. Which I think is an incredible either gift or talent, because that's nothing I can do. And yet when you're having lunch with Angelina Jolie or Sean Penn or anybody, it's just, they're just people. And the thing that is, I think, difficult for them is the other people confuse them with their characters, is how they know them. So when people come up to Clint Eastwood, they think he's Dirty Harry, like he's a tough guy. Or they come up to Angelina and I think it starts to make them a little crazy, or it's just not pleasant. It's totally, I understand completely. And yet, on the other hand, there are a lot of people, most of them are very generous with fans, as long as, you know, it's when you're eating a plate of spaghetti and it's like, can I take your picture?
I know.
And it's like, if you did that to your children, they'd be annoyed too. I would be annoyed. Most of the people I work with, I admire because they're very, very generous, and they realize that they're sort of a doorway to aspiration for their fans, and they're just generous that way with autographs. It gets to be correct, it's gotten a little bizarre right now because things show up on eBay. So it'll be, well, would you sign this picture for me? And then it ends up on eBay the next day for $75, and that's really not the point.
Right.
That the fellow is, so it's funny, and I've seen that happen in the last 10 years where it gets a little, it's unclear exactly what's, it's not as naive and wholesome as it used to be, it seems to me.
I see. Oh. I'm not going to ask you who that one person is that you wouldn't want to work with, but I'd like to ask you about maybe an actor that you've worked with in the past that you particularly found very pleasant to work with. Is there maybe one or two or a couple that you...
Oh, they're one of them. Actually, I'll tell you a story, and then you guys can edit it. But we did Mystic River, which was my second film that I ever shot. Sean Penn, he is the star, the lead in it. And as I said earlier, I worked with Sean when he must have been 18, or 17, 18, and kind of a punk. And Sean is an incredibly smart guy. And he's also very wry and sardonic and can be a little sarcastic, as can I. And so we're doing this movie, and it's like, oh, Sean, I see you. Oh, no, you're the cameraman, and we started this whole joke about, we didn't, he did, and he'd come, well, Tom, you know, I know this is your second picture, and I've worked with a lot of other experienced cameramen, and a lot of times in this position and in a situation, an experienced cameraman he'd have the camera over, maybe with like a 40mm lens, and I'd say, yes, Sean, thank you very, very much. You know, I'd be lost without you, like, you know. And so we go through the whole 8 weeks like this, joking with each other some. And it was shown, premiered in New York at the film festival, and there was an after party. And Sean came up to me, and he's like, Tom. I said, yeah, Sean, hi. He said, hi, Tom. You know, we're doing that, and it was all so fast, and you were so unobtrusive. I thought it was going to be kind of like a documentary. And I said, well, I'm sorry, what are you trying to say? He said, well, it's magnificent. And I said, Sean, are you trying to apologize? And that was the kind of the thing. But I mean, he's a prince, and he's, you know, they're all wonderful people.
Is there maybe a message that you would like to deliver to the viewers that are watching right now? A message to your fans that are watching right now?
Well, I don't know about my fans, but I think everybody should come to Korea as soon as they can. Should I look at that?
Yes.
Everybody should come to Korea as soon as they can. It's actually, I'm here with my life partner, and we're like looking out the train and like, God, we got to come back. We've been a little tightly scheduled, but just the idea about being able to come back and seeing some rural areas and you know, without working for the Chamber of Commerce, everybody's been so gracious and polite, and it's very, very impressive.
It's wonderful to hear that you're, yes, you've enjoyed your stay so far in Korea. We have 4 beautiful seasons, 4 very distinct seasons, so I guarantee any time of the year, whenever you come back, would be a beautiful time to visit. I do want to thank you once again for your time, despite your very busy schedule. As you said, you have a flight to catch tonight. But thank you for coming, and we hope that you continue to create wonderful works, and we hope that you take back great memories of Korea.
Well, the memories are guaranteed, and I'll do what I can about the work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank
you
you
for your time and patience.
감사합니다.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.